Hey there, vinyl community. It's been a while since I got on camera, and it's been even longer since I did any type of record update. So I'm going to do a vinyl update video and talk about the records I've been collecting for the past summer, really. The first group of records that I'm going to talk about is some records that I bought from Mazzy, Norman Maslov, who is another vinyl YouTuber, from his Coleman collection sales. So, first of all, I know that most of the people that watch my channel are going to be familiar with Mazzy. If you're not familiar with Mazzy, let me just say he's one of the best vinyl YouTubers out there. He's especially talented at doing what he does, and I think there's a reason his channel is so successful. It's just he's able to put into words, I think more than any other channel I've encountered, the human connection and the human element of record collecting. So in his videos, he talks a lot about how records were a part of his life, where he was when he collected records, what certain albums mean to him and the memories he associates with them, and what new music means to him now. So I think he's got a very special talent in that. And so if you are one of the few people that watches my channel but doesn't watch his, check it out in the description box below. As many of you may be aware, Mazzy recently purchased the record collection of his longtime friend Coleman Burke, who unfortunately recently passed away. And Coleman had a really spectacular record collection. And so Mazzy and his friend purchased this collection from Coleman's family. And he's, keeping some records, he's selling some records, he's doing a lot of live stream auctions, but Coleman did have some really nice classical records. And so Mazzy contacted me and showed me some stuff and asked me if I'd be interested in buying some of these records from him. And, of course, Coleman had pretty good taste in almost everything he collected, and the bit of classical he did collect, he had great taste in, and there were some great records in there. So Mazzy sent them over for me, and if you bought from the Coleman collection, you may recognize this card. It's a picture of his friend Coleman Burke and a little blurb about him on the back and about the collection. And for those that haven't bought a record from the Coleman collection, I'm just going to read this out because I think it's a really wonderful tribute to his friend. I first met Coleman in 1973. He was a customer at the very record store I worked at in San Francisco, The Warehouse. We hired him on for the holiday season, and we have been friends ever since. Coleman and I shared a great love for Jefferson Airplane, the Kinks, and of course the Beatles. A few years later, Coleman put together his dream band, an R&B soul party band called Pride and Joy. The group performed throughout the Bay Area and beyond for over 4 decades. Taking on the stewardship of Coleman's record collection has been a bittersweet symphony, and I'm happy to conduct its distribution to other music lovers. Enjoy the music, Norman Maslov. So, I think this is a really sweet thing that Mazzy's done in memory of his friend, and also as a record collector, because when someone assembles a really carefully curated collection like this, a large collection like this, it's nice to give the collection some sort of tribute so that the memory of its owner lives on, and I think Mazzy's done this perfectly. So I'm going to stop sentimentalizing and show the records I picked up. This is a pressing on the German label Das Alte Werk, which is a sub-label of the Telefunken record label. And this is music by Jean-Philippe Rameau, Pieces de Clavecin and Concert. So clavecin is the French word for harpsichord. So these are pieces for both solo harpsichord and harpsichords and other players. There's flute on here, flute traverso, viola da gamba, violin. So a nice bit of chamber music centered around the harpsichord by Jean-Philippe Rameau, who is one of, I think, the central figures when I think about French Baroque music. For those that don't know a lot about French Baroque music, Jean-Philippe Rameau was one of the innovators of it. He was kind of the person who took over the stewardship of the national French musical style after Jean-Baptiste Lully, who was kind of the foremost father of French national composition. So if you're looking for French Baroque music, the names you want to hear are Jean-Baptiste Lully, Jean-Philippe Rameau, and then of course Francois the Great Couperin. I say the Great because there are multiple members of the Couperin family who are all composers, but Francois Couperin is the most well-known, and he's oftentimes referred to in textbooks and literature as Francois the Great Couperin. So those 3 composers, if you get some French music by those 3 composers and it's played well, you can't really go wrong. I'm very excited for this. This one is an interesting one. This is an alto audio reissue of a classic EMI HMV His Master's Voice 1960s stereo recording. Could be 1950s actually. I didn't look it up. This is Yehui Menuhin and the Bath Festival Orchestra doing The Musical Offering by Johann Sebastian Bach. Next is a audiophile blockbuster. A lot of audiophiles are actually going to be familiar with this artist and probably familiar with this recording. This is the bass virtuoso Gary Carr playing Adagio di Albinoni. And this is on the Japanese King Super Analog label. These were actually, I think this one was done by the time that Cisco Music had bought the rights to the label. So these are pressed at RTI, but it is a Japanese record label putting them out. And I believe the mastering was done in Japan, if I am not mistaken. Another Japanese King Super Analog reissue, this time of a London recording. This is the wonderful Istvan Kertész conducting Mozart's Requiem with the Vienna Philharmonic. Just an absolutely star-spangled recording. Also from the Coleman collection, we have more French Baroque music. This is François Couperin Trio Sonatas and Jean-Marie Leclerc Violin Sonatas. This record is on Arctic Production, which was the early music sub-label of Deutsche Grammophon. Excellent pressings, excellent performances. The last record I got from Mazzy is a record that it's been on my Discogs want list forever, and I just never got around to picking it up. It is the Classic Records reissue of the living stereo recording Berlioz' Symphonie Fantastique with Charles Munch and the Boston Symphony Orchestra. An absolutely wonderful reference quality recording and performance. So that's it for the Coleman collection. I did get a few other classical releases. I got this at Amoeba Records in Los Angeles when I went there with Michael Mueller, another vinyl YouTuber. This is the DCC Compact Classics reissue of the Everest recording, Tchaikovsky's Francesca di Rimini, with Leopold Stokowski and the Stadium Symphony Orchestra of New York. If my memory serves me, the Stadium Symphony of New York was actually basically the New York Philharmonic, but they couldn't use the New York Philharmonic name for the recording. So I believe it's like a freelance version of the New York Philharmonic, but I believe most of the New York Phil players did in fact play on this recording. If someone has different information than what I've gotten through the rumor mill, let me know down in the comments. The last couple classical releases I picked up is this Analog Productions reissue of Tchaikovsky's 1812 Overture with Fritz Reiner and the Chicago Symphony. So this is one of two releases that I picked up this summer that are the last remaining releases of the Analog Productions Living Stereo series that I had yet to own. So I didn't have this, and I had yet to get Gary Graffman playing Liszt solo piano music, the virtuoso Liszt. So with these two records, my Living Stereo collection is complete. And these are all records that for classical music, I pull from the most. I think AP has done a wonderful job with that Living Stereo series. I really hope they do more. I'm hoping this isn't the end of it. It's been a long time since they released a set, so I'm hoping in the future they can do another set of these Living Stereo titles. One last classical record that I got at a record store down in Tucson is a nice dollar bin find. This is Bartók's Concerto for Orchestra with the Boston Symphony Orchestra conducted by Eric Leinsdorf on RCA Living Stereo. And this is a nice, clean, shaded dog copy. Look at that. 2021 has definitely been the year of me expanding my musical horizons, particularly collecting a lot of classic 70s and 80s Japanese pop, funk, and disco. Japan produced a lot of great albums in the 70s and 80s. It was a time of their economic boom. It's kind of equivalent to, in the recording industry in the United States, equivalent to the era of the 60s and early 70s. Japan had kind of their cultural and economic boom in the late 70s and early to mid 80s. This is a topic that I'm actually going to dedicate an entire video to in my Pacific Postcard series, but I have been getting some Japanese records from this era, particularly reissues. So Japan is still not really on the vinyl bandwagon. They're still releasing things mostly in the format of CD. However, they are starting to reissue some classic and hard to find albums. A lot of these records are actually not pressed in Japan because Japan only has 1 or 2 working pressing plants right now, and it's hard to get things pressed there. So a lot of these are actually pressed like in Europe or in America at RTI or QRP. Like this reissue that is pressed in Germany, this is Dip in the Pool, Retenay. Great kind of ambient, experimental, mellow pop album from the mid-'80s. One band that I've been listening to a lot this summer has been the band Blues Creation, or as they were later called, Creation. A really excellent psychedelic blues rock band from the late 60s and through the mid-70s in Japan. I have here a wonderfully pressed reissue, I don't know if it's analog or digital, of their debut album, Blues Creation. This is very, very hard to find in the original format, so I'm very lucky I was able to hunt down the reissue. Another rare record that's been reissued is Carmen Maki and Blues Creation. This is a record they did with the singer Carmen Maki. Another Blues Creation record, Demon and 11 Children, also a reissue. But I also did get some original Creation records. This is a US release with the American artist Felix Pappalardi. So Felix Pappalardi and Creation. And finally, really interesting record that I haven't got to listen to yet. I don't have a cartridge right now. I will have one soon, and I may show it in a video. But I've been without a cartridge for about 2.5, 3 weeks now, so a lot of records have gone unlistened to. But this is Creation in studio live direct-to-disc. So this is actually a direct-to-disc cut record that Creation did live in the studio. This looks interesting, and this is a Japanese release, Japanese pressing from the mid-70s. This next record is Japanese music, but it's not a Japanese release. This is an interesting compilation I came across in the bins of a local record store here. This is Nippon Girls, Japanese pop, beat, and bossa nova, 1967 to 1969. A lot of cool, interesting Japanese pop artists from the late 60s on this comp. It's cool music. It's kind of the other side of the coin to the Japanese group sounds bands that I did a video on not too long ago. Here we have some classic releases from the late 70s and early 80s by Japanese city pop artist Junko Ohashi. This is Junko Ohashi and Miura Central Station Shalom. And Junko Ohashi Crystal City. These are excellent, excellent, funky, jazzy pop records from the late 70s and early 80s. Speaking of city pop, for the last 2 years I've been collecting a lot of the godfather of city pop records by Tatsuro Yamashita. And the most recent one that I picked up is his Greatest Hits record. Greatest Hits of Tatsuro Yamashita. Original Japanese pressing. Wonderful, wonderful record full of some of his best songs from early in his career. In terms of Japanese music, which is a lot of what I've been collecting recently, one of the most interesting reissue series that's come around in a while is this reissue series called Great Tracks. Now, this is a reissue series that's done by a Japanese label. The recordings are digitally mastered in Japan, and then they're sent over to Bernie Grunman at Bernie Grunman Mastering to cut them into records, and they're pressed at Quality Record Pressing in Salina, Kansas. So very interesting. These are very good sounding records. I don't have originals of a lot of these to compare, but even if they're from digital, they're very, very good sounding high-res digital cuts. And you know, you got Bernie Grunman cutting them, pressed at QRP. For this kind of music, it's more than what anyone could ask for. So this is the debut album, Cassiopeia, self-titled album by the instrumental jazz fusion rock group Cassiopeia. Really, really interesting, fast-paced, jazzy rock music that I think a lot of people will like. So if like instrumental kind of fusion-y jazz music is your thing, check out Cassiopeia. And probably the more famous Cassiopeia record, this is Mint Jams, also a Great Tracks reissue. Two more Great Tracks city pop reissues here. This is Minako Yoshida, Let's Do It. Minako Yoshida is one of my favorite city pop artists. She has this smoky, jazzy, bluesy voice that just kind of, it's one of the most enticing female vocals I've heard in a long time. And she puts that over, you know, a lot of city pop is funky, but this is like bluesy funky. This is really kind of dirty funk. Sounds really great, and her vocals are just gorgeous on this. Another great track's Minako Yoshida reissue. This is Lighten Up. And then one more from Minako Yoshida, because I've been really digging her stuff. This is an original pressing of her live album, In Motion. This is another very, very difficult to find record, either in reissue or in originals. This is the album Challenge by Yu Yu Yoshida and the Flowers. So Yu Yu Yoshida and the Flowers was the precursor band to a more well-known band that some of you may be familiar with. That is Flower Travelin' Band. So Flower Travelin' Band were this incredible psychedelic acid rock, progressive rock band from Japan in the 70s. But before they were Flower Travelin' Band, they were Yu Yu Yoshida and the Flowers. Yu Yu Yoshida was one of the founding kind of godfathers of rock music in Japan. And he would leave the band only musically and remain on as their producer when they became Flower Travelin' Band. Here is more of a folk rock album than a pop album. This is Yosoi Inoue, and I gotta make sure I say this right, Nishoku no Koma. This is his 1974 studio album. I'm a big fan of Yosoi Inoue, perhaps most well known for writing the blistering folk rock ballad Kasaganai, which I will be making a video about sometime in the future. Another city pop release. This is an original pressing of The Rainbow Goblins by Masayoshi Takanaka. Really cool cover here. This almost reminds me of like a hybrid between the art of like Roger Dean on like some Yes albums, and actually this reminds me of stagings of Wagner's The Ring. The art on this cover. Maybe it's because of the rainbow. I don't know. And the woodsiness. More city pop. This is Maria Takeuchi's Miss M. Probably her best album. I'm not a big Maria Takeuchi fan normally. I really like this album. For me, she's got some great singles, and I know she's like the darling queen of city pop online. Her records are probably some of the more sought after city pop records, and people really love her for her song Plastic Love, which kind of launched the city pop resurgence in Reddit and other online communities. And that's a good song, and she's got some really great singles, but of all her albums, this is probably the one I like the best, Miss M. The last Japanese record on this list is a P-Vine reissue that just came out a couple months ago. This is Yoshiko Sai's 1977 experimental avant-garde dark folk album. Gotta make sure I say this one right. Taiji no Yume from 1977. These reissues, these Yoshiko Sai reissues, have been flying off the shelves. Get these while you can. I'm sure they will sell out in a month or two. But they're very, very good sounding reissues. I don't have originals to compare because the originals of these records are like $300. So get the reissue while it's possible. Some jazz records I picked up. This is the Kraft recording reissue of A Boy Named Charlie Brown, the Vince Guaraldi Trio. I mean, who didn't watch these cartoons when you were a kid? I remember really enjoying the music on these cartoons when I was a kid, and it's really great to have this in original analog sound by Kraft Recording. Got some Blue Note classic reissues here. Everyone's been collecting these. I just wanted to show them quickly. Herbie Hancock, Maiden Voyage. Grant Green, Idle Moments. Kenny Burrell, Midnight Blue. Do I have the Music Matters reissues of these already? Yeah. Did I buy the classics? Yeah. What am I going to do? This is an interesting reissue from Japan, done by King Records. It's done from Hi-Res Digital, but it's done by King Records, and I have a lot of old pressings by King Records that are really, really good. So I wanted to give this a shot. It looked interesting. This is for Chet Baker in Tokyo. We have the new Speaker's Corner reissue, Shape of Jazz to Come, Ornette Coleman, classic album. A record everyone's been showing off because it just came out, new Acoustic Sounds Verb series, Bill Evans, Trio 64. Here's a record that I've been hunting for a long time. This is Lady in Satin by Billie Holiday on 200-gram vinyl by Classic Records. What can I say about this album? It's one of the most acclaimed Billie Holiday albums. It's kind of bittersweet because her voice had gone, but for the most part by this point. She was a sick woman, both physically and mentally. But the performance here is just so intimate, so emotional that you have to admire it as one of her greats. Definitely the best album of her later career. Here's a wonderful seam split laden copy I have of Wonderful Sounds of Female Vocals by Analog Productions. A Blue Note Tone Poet release that I've been meaning to get for a while and just picked it up about a month ago. This is Andrew Hill, Passing Ships. Love Andrew Hill, one of my favorite Blue Note artists. And last in the jazz group, this is just these masterfully well done, one of these Sam Records reissues, Chet Baker and his quintet with Bobby Jasper. These guys are making, they don't have the big names like Acoustic Sounds or Blue Note has, but these Sam Records jazz reissues are just some of the most well done jazz reissues I have ever come across. They're hard to find in the US, but if you can get a hold of them, they're brilliant. Just brilliant recordings, brilliant pressings. The tip-on jackets on these things are just incredible. All right, on to the rock, pop, metal, normal stuff. So, as many of you know, the Mars Volta have recently reissued their entire catalog on vinyl, as they claim from the original master tapes. So we have some long overdue Mars Volta reissues here. We have their debut album, Deloused in the Comatorium. I do have the music on vinyl pressing of this. I will be doing a comparison. So look for that hopefully soon. But here is one that I do not have on vinyl. I did not have until now. That's long overdue on vinyl. This is the reissue of Francis the Mute, their second album on 3 LPs. This might be my favorite. This and Deloused are my two favorite Volta albums. I think it's the peak of their creativity, the peak of their career. And then we have their fourth album, Bedlam and Goliath. This I do have the original debut pressing of. It should sound the same as this because they're using the same masters, so we'll see. As some of you know, the drummer for Slipknot, Joey Jordison, recently passed away. And it's kind of put me back on a Slipknot kick, and I didn't have any Slipknot on vinyl. And a lot of their pressings of their early albums are pretty much unavailable. They need to be reissued. I would love to see a reissue on vinyl of the debut album or of Iowa, because Iowa, I think, is my favorite Slipknot album. I know it is for most people. But we do have their most recent album available, and I picked that up. It's We Are Not Your Kind by Slipknot. This is a good album. I enjoyed it a lot, and it's mastered well. Of course, it's digital, but if you're looking to explore, newer, heavier music, every once in a while I'll recommend a heavy album that I think is mastered very well for the genre, and this is one of those. So if you want a good sounding heavy metal album, check out Slipknot, We Are Not Your Kind. For something way heavier, we have 3 album reissues I picked up recently by the black metal band Emperor. And these are actually interesting. These are half-speed mastered reissues. And they were recommended to me by one of my social media buddies. You can check him out on Instagram, the Jazz Metal Audiophile. Really cool audiophile who has a lot of kind of eclectic taste just like me. And he recommended these to me. This is probably the most famous Emperor album, In the Night Side Eclipse, their second album, and what many consider to be one of the best black metal albums of all time. This is 9 Equilibrium, also by Emperor. And Prometheus, Discipline of Fire and Demise. Yes, they have to have the most metal sounding album titles. And more metal. This is an album that I've been wanting to get on vinyl for a while and finally recently picked it up about 2 months ago. This is Metallica with Michael Kamen and the San Francisco Symphony Orchestra. I think when done right, when the arrangements are good, some of these albums that some of these metal and hard rock bands do with symphony orchestras can sound incredible. They can match really well. Some of them, sometimes they can sound bad. I've played many orchestral pops concerts with not good arrangements, that they just wanted that orchestral sound, but they didn't really think about arranging the music well. And I've played some of those pops concerts in my career. But this is not one of them. The arrangements on this are great, and actually, some Metallica songs on here that I'd never really liked that much before, I really like in the symphonic version with the San Francisco Symphony. And the sound on this is great sound. This is an album that I did not intend to buy. This is the music on vinyl pressing of Avril Lavigne, Let Go. I didn't buy this album. I bought another album, and Amazon shipped this to be my mistake. And I took a look at it and I said, you know, I know most of these songs from my childhood. They were all over the radio. They were, you know, everyone was playing them. They were on my iPod. And, you know, even though this isn't, I think, the greatest album in the world, it's kind of a kind of cynical attempt at corporate music record labels to cash in on the popularity of like the punk rock skater aesthetic. I can't help liking this to some extent, almost ironically, but, you know, so I got sent this record by mistake by Amazon, and I decided, you know, I'm not going to return this. I'm going to hang on to this, and, you know, I'll break it out every now and then when I want to have a nostalgia trip from middle school. The Experience Hendrix reissue of Jimi Hendrix Smash Hits with the cool alternate cowboy cover. And you may say, Michael, you don't have Smash Hits already? Well, yes, I do. I have a 80s Japanese pressing of Smash Hits. But this is a AAA QRP pressed version of Smash Hits. So I'd much rather have this. This sounds much better than my 80s Japanese one. This is a record that I feel like every record collector has to own, even if they like it or not, and this is Steely Dan's Asia. I recently found this in a record bin, and I said, you know, why the hell don't I have this record? So I picked this up. It's cliche, I know, but it's like, why don't I have this already? Here's one I've been definitely meaning to pick up. I'm so glad it's been reissued. This is the 40th anniversary edition of The Specials. Probably the best song they've ever written, Ghost Town. It was a song they wrote kind of right before the band took a downward turn and broke up. Man, this is a topical record even for today, I think. But it especially, I don't think there's a single song that expresses the kind of cynical, depressing nature of Thatcher-era Great Britain than this song, Ghost Town. It's one of the most perfect songs ever written, I think. It's been a while since I bought a post-hardcore record, probably because I have a lot of the seminal post-hardcore records in my collection. But I ran across this, and this is kind of cool. I don't have this. This is the Seattle band Pretty Girls Make Graves. This is the, I don't think this has been reissued. This is the original pressing, the debut EP by Pretty Girls Make Graves. This is an album that's just recently been reissued. This is the self-titled album by Pentangle. I haven't listened to this yet. This is an album that I became aware of because of Mazzy. I know I talked about Mazzy in the beginning of the video, but you know, he inspired me to buy this. He has original pressings of this album and many other Pentangle albums, and you know, he talks them up a lot, and so I kind of wanted to see what all the hype was, so I did pick up this reissue. I have no idea how it sounds or how this record was mastered. Probably, you know, from some type of digital mastering, but cool, interesting music. I look forward to checking it out. I know right now Abbey Road half-speed masters are not in vogue. They're getting kind of critically panned across all vinyl YouTube channels, and I'm not a big fan of them myself, but I did have to pick up. I heard from some people in the Hoffman forums that this release actually sounds pretty good. I picked this up. This is the reissue of the original album, Andrew Lloyd Webber, Jesus Christ Superstar, the rock opera that would later go on to be a musical. And despite the fact that I'm not a Christian, I really do enjoy this musical. I think the music on it is really, really good. I think it works as a musical, it works as an album. I like this version because I do really like Ian Gillan. However, I will say, I think I like the music on the film version more. And the reason for that is I really liked Ted Neely singing the role of Jesus. I think he does a really good job, and as much as I'm a huge Deep Purple fan, and I really like Ian Gillan, and I like him in this, I think Ted Neely does the role better. If I'm wrong, let me know down there. All right, the last record. I know I showed way too many records in this video, but the last record I have is Leon Bridges' Gold Digger Sound. This is a 2021 album release. This is not the kind of music I normally collect. It's kind of a new R&B, a little bit of hip hop, but it's like a new style R&B kind of album. It's good. It's very inventive. It's a very unique sounding album that kind of carves out its own sound. It's just not normally the type of music that I go for. However, I did have to buy this because one of my close friends actually played on this album. She played bass, upright bass on this album. And, you know, I got to support my friends. So Leon Bridges, Gold Digger sound. So that's it. We're done. We have reached the end of the video. Thank you guys for watching. I know that was a lot of records, but we made it through. Cheers, everyone.